People who didn't get university degree. What is your profession now? Story 1. I work in the northern Canada doing reforestation. I work 3 months a year and make $45K. Rest of year, I'm out of the country. Been doing it 7 years. Have personally planted 1.4 million trees. Story 2. Sales for 15 years. Dislike the cultural. Quit everything and moved to Latin America. Now I work 20 hours a week tutoring English and hosting karaoke. I live 2 minutes walk from the ocean, and life truly has never been better. I'm also debt-free and have been for about a decade now. I buy everything I want in cash, and if I can't afford it without payment, I can't afford it. Story 3. Truck driver. 130K a year. Home every night. Teamster union. Pension and free health insurance for whole family. Just retired. 50 years old. We have the 80 rule. If years of service plus age equals 80, we can retire and collect full pension. I moved to Southeast Asia, loving life on my pension. Story 4. Oil field crane operator. 200K a year and have 4 months a year off. Both daughters' college was paid for in cash. 2 house payments left and 46 years old. Story 5. 50-year M. I own and operate a house cleaning business. Started it 35 years ago, making $12 an hour. Now my show fee is $75, plus $50 hour after first. I work 48 hours a week. Debt-free, no HS degree or GED. Dropped out in 10th grade. I clear 130K a year. Invested well. Be retired in 5 years at age 55. Story 6. Chemical operator. 107K a year. I mostly just sit back and relax. I only have to occasionally get up and actually go do something. Story 7. I have been an instructional designer for about 25 years. No degree until 8 years ago. I was already at the top of my job band. I finished my degree as a personal goal. Story 8. So I got only an associate's degree at a community college, which some people hardly consider a degree. It's almost like going to a technical school or something like that. Now I work in IT for public schools. I've got the potential of maybe earning between 70 and 100K per year. Currently making a bit less than that since I'm not a director admin. If I decided to get other certifications for a better paying job, I'd probably have to relocate nearer to a large city, which I don't love living in large cities. So it's a give to get choice. Edit. I'm in the USA. Realize that university means you're probably outside the US. Story 9. Joined the Army to pay for college and then forgot to go. I actually do have a few years worth of credits, just no degree. I've done a lot of technical work over the years in and out of FedGov space. All kinds of stuff from my military background in electronics tech and RF to just run-of-the-mill IT operations. I would say my longest and most current career is as a senior network engineer, and I spend a lot of my time analyzing firewall policy and optimizing application traffic for web apps. The uni experience I have has helped me as much as my technical training, and I really enjoy the work and have a true passion for it. Unlike a lot of my colleagues, I also like people, and I think that helps a lot too. My wife works and most of my kids are grown, so between me and my wife we do pretty well. But we also live in a H-call area, so it is comfortable most of the time. But we never escape the feeling of struggle. Story 10. Industrial maintenance. 100K a year, 4 weeks vacation, medical, vision, dental, and life insurance, 401K match, some other random benefits like employee discounts on gym memberships and phone plans. Plus, a large portion of my job amounts to monitoring the system, i.e., if everything is running right, I do my PMS and read. Answer. What city and how long have you been in the trade for? I'm 10 months into it as a mobile lead engineer, working on getting my licenses to eventually go and be a project manager. Like you said, most of my job is sitting back and monitoring, and since I just fill in for guys when they're on vacation, I rarely do PMs unless I'm helping a site out with a CT or AHU. Story 11. I have a degree in baking and pastry, and now I clean rental and used cars. For only 50 cents less starting, I've worked with so many people in restaurants with degrees that didn't work out for them. Story 12. I'm a penetration tester and security consultant. Was a systems administrator before that for nearly a decade. That formal education probably would have helped back then, but I've always been an autodidact when it comes to learning, so maybe not. Story 13. Public works. Messed up a lot in life, but I turned myself around before 30. 2 years in making 60K, more like 70K after OT. living well within my means and comfortably. With no promotion, in 10 years, I'll be making well over 110K. Can retire in 28 years with full pension and benefits. I did not take a smart path, but I'm a living example of second chances. Story 14. Crusher Foreman. I take ugly rock and dirty material and crush sort it to various kinds and sizes of aggregate. I maintain and repair the plant in addition to running about every piece of heavy equipment on site to keep things going smooth. Primarily in a 50T loader feeding the plant though. It's about 85 to 100K a year depending on overtime, plus company truck and a fuel card. I am relatively new, so room to grow still. Not a bad gig. Story 15. It seems that most replies are from men. What do women without a university degree do? I'm eager to know. Answer. I work in property and casualty insurance as an account executive, and I make 95K a year with full remote work options. I started at $17 an hour in 2013 as a basic customer service rep, got licensed, made connections, and used them. 50 of jobs are never advertised. Be bold enough to ask people for help. Many people will help you, refer you, or even give you a chance if you're tenacious enough to ask. Find someone successful near you and ask questions, and have a little follow-through on what they tell you. They'll help you if your interest is genuine. Story 16. After high school, went to MBO, comparable to community college in US, did level 23 combined, and eventually did level 4 as well. 4 is the highest. I could also go back and do the same classes, but on HBO, higher education, but it'll be darn. Got my degree as technical specialist, car mechanic, and so far I got 9 years at my current job as mechanic. Started when I was 16 and am now 25. I'm doing just fine. Make 30K a year, euro. Story 17. Short answer, sales. Long answer, spent 8 years working at a major corporation, starting from their call center, before working my way up to territory manager, before being abruptly let go in 2024. Now I'm in property management, but 80% of my entire job is sales and 20 actual property management. It's actually fun, and I am trying to be the change where I have power to do so in this field, because honestly, fudge landlords. Story 18. Software engineer. Idiotic decision, but this is what happens when you have no peers, mentors, connections. Story 19. I am a public assistance eligibility worker for my state. I make about 56K yearly right now. It has excellent benefits and a pension, plus still pay into FICA. There is a clear track to move up to about 78K, and then it tops out unless I get a degree. But I'm thankful because it's about the max I can make in my area without one, except for entrepreneurship or something. Story 20. I run a landscaping crew. Funnest job I ever had. Love my people. Love the work. Love being outside. And love being my own boss. Story 21. Container barge captain. Good salary. Half the year off vacation days. Free food and utilities on the boat. Story 22. Went to the now defunct ITT Technical Institute because of its reputation, and now that it's practically uncredited because the school was the center of a massive lawsuit. I usually tell people I didn't go to college at all, as my degree is worth less than the piece of paper it was printed on. That being said, I'd say out of all of the people I went to school with there, I'm probably in a group of less than maybe 5 that are actually still employed in their respective field of study. Story 23. Secretary receptionist. It's a comfy job and it pays the rent okay, but I want to study something again in the future. Maybe get into art. Story 24. I dropped out of Drexel after about 18 months and far too much money. Now I fix cars. Currently, BMWs. Average between 120K a year, so I really can't complain. Plus, I've driven some extremely nice cars throughout my career. Story 25. Intelligent automation developer working with RPA and AI. Never even passed my maths GCSE, so God knows how I swung this. Story 26. I deal with the stock market. Psychologically, I'm depressed and antisocial, but this is my only chance. Story 27. Social media marketing for a government agency. Quite fun, and a number of my colleagues don't have formal qualifications. Story 28. Just finished my degree this year. Work in advanced technical support, but I had that job before I even returned to college. Story 29. Maintenance mechanic, 36 hour, with 5 weeks vacation and insane insurance, as well as 3x pay on holidays and 2x on any 6th day of the week. I also own a bar and bought into a friend's business, which has absolutely blown up in the last 8 years. All the money from the latter two things goes straight to savings. My wife is a housekeeping manager who makes 27 hour and owns a couple farms and houses in her home country. That money also goes straight to savings. Our son graduates in 2032. He'll turn 50 shortly after, and we both plan to retire then. Story 30. Working at a college, ironically. I'm an admin, staff, in one of the main offices. It required work experience or a degree, and I had the former. Might go back and finish my degree, though, because it'll be free this time around. Story 31. I'm really happy for everyone's success posting here, but I'm sure there's a bias of people posting because they're doing well despite the odds. In case any young people entering the real world are reading through this thread, I want to offer my lack of success as someone who didn't get a university degree. I worked at dead-end retail jobs for a few years. Then I worked outside sales, driving around a predetermined area trying to sell my product to stores, not making much money. That led to a more lucrative sales job, still only $65K in 2015, which I was not equipped to handle and got fired from very quickly. After that blow, I went back to retail, more specifically grocery store management, making less money than before. I worked my way up in the management chain until I realized I didn't love the job. I loved the people I worked with when I started out. Around that same time, I found a passion in technology. I went back for an associate's degree and then a bachelor's. It was honestly much easier than the first time I tried going to school. Guess I'd matured a bit. Now I work in IT. Don't get me wrong. It's still a job with its ups and downs, but at least it's something I'm genuinely interested in. I guess the point of this post is to offer advice to anyone entering the workforce wondering what they should do. Just because you can make money doing something doesn't mean it is worth doing. Remember that you will have to live every day with whatever career you choose. You don't want to dislike 5 out of 7 days of the week just to hit some monetary goal. Take the time to figure out what you're interested in and pursue it. If you are truly passionate, money will likely follow. If doing that requires a degree, get that degree. If it takes you a decade to figure it out, that's fine too. Story 32. I learned a trade repairing hydraulic systems, then started my own company. Now I have multiple locations. I'm doing pretty good, live comfortably, was able to buy my house, can afford my kids things I never had and can travel. Story 33. Registered nurse, ADRN. I worked in ICU for 18 years. Because of my experience, my career choices are limitless. I went to a regionally known, challenging school. The hospitals knew I was qualified for the job I was hired for. Therefore, they gave me opportunities. My coworkers never knew I was an ADRN. Story 34. Age 18 through 34. Landscaper, laborer, foreman, designer, 34 to 36. Web designer, 36 to 47. Junior, senior, front-end developer. Got laid off as a front-end developer, May 2025. Just got hired as a senior clinical data analyst. Story 35. I've done account management, project management. Now I'm a doula and perinatal behavioral health coach working remote and flexibly. I also teach classes on childbirth and breastfeeding. Story 36. Well, we start the day by wrestling a wild llama for breakfast, translate 3 hours of hand gestures into a work meeting, and end it by negotiating with our coffee machine like it owes us money. Pretty standard. Story 37. Jerk wiper in a group home. Went to college 3 years planning to do mechanical engineering. Dropped out for financial reasons. Been stuck in dead-end jobs since. You can't get anywhere without a degree anymore, and they've made it near impossible to get one without serious financial help from others. Story 38. IT program manager. Started in production, jumped to IT support trainer, then project coordinator BA, then PM. All internal moves. Story 39. Commercial mechanic mining equipment operator. 80K year starting. Benefits that exceed or compete with NYS benefits. Going into fly-in, fly-out operations within a few years. Story 40. Dropped out of engineering school in '08 due to family money. Got a seasonal job at UPS. Ended up becoming a driver. Make around 110K YR. 6 weeks paid off. Full health care. Pension. I think about going back, but am unlikely to get these benefits or pay in my intended field for at least a decade. At that point, I'll be close enough to retirement. Story 41. I work in the IT industry making 6 figures. Not having a degree almost definitely hurt me in the first 5 years or so of my career, But after that, it's not an issue as employers are more interested in what you can do rather than what you studied in college. Story 42. Senior automation technician for an energy producer. I love my work, but at 42, I have regrets about not going on to higher education. Story 43. Senior software engineer. Dropped out of college, commercial art, got married, worked in factory, got laid off. My friends taught me to use a Mac, Illustrator, and Photoshop. Got a job doing graphic design. Got laid off in .com bust. Got a job in IT stockroom. Moved up in IT department over 14 years. Then 9 years ago got hired in programming department and learned to program. Story 44. I'm currently a pet sitter. I plan to go back to school once I move states, but I can't decide what I want to do. Story 45. I dropped out of college, but this hasn't stopped me from having worked professionally as a teacher, writer, data scientist, project manager, interpreter, and so on. Sometimes the skills you have are more important than having a diploma. Story 46. Information system analyst. No IT degree, just good enough IT jobs that taught me a lot and people having faith in me. Story 47. Left school in year 10 to work as a plasterer. Started my own business at 22. Broke my shoulder playing sport. Moved into selling new homes. Now at 34, I have 36 reps reporting to me as head of sales and make roughly $550K a year. Story 48. Started as a welder with my 2-year diploma from a trade school. I do production control now. Climate-controlled desk gig that pays the bills. Slow days, I browse Reddit and teach myself new Excel sheet tricks. Story 49. Went into web development, self-taught, sold software to business owners, ran a SaaS, then went into publishing, blogs, etc. Made good investments along the way, lived frugally and still do. Now semi-retired, early 40s. Story 50. I got my license as a nursing assistant and have been doing it for over a decade. I enjoy it well enough, and the pay is decent, but admittedly could be more. Story 51. Was a medical assistant until a few years ago. Stay-at-home mom now, and make a decent chunk of money according to our taxes, half my husband's income. Story 52. I work in program support and teaching quality assurance at a large UK university. I started as a temp receptionist 20 years ago and worked my way up to my current role. I've worked for a new university, 30 years established, an exceptionally old university, 530 years established, and now I work for a large Russell Group uni. I've worked across healthcare, business, and engineering faculties. The irony isn't lost on me. Story 53. Didn't even have diploma, barely surviving, need to pay some debt first, but so hard to find jobs these days. Live with my mom. I want to get a diploma next year, but I don't know if I can do it with debt, mental health issues, etc. Story 54. I went to uni to do a degree in computer management and networking, but dropped out during the first year. Switched to motorsport engineering, which I properly enjoyed. Ended up failing on account of my major project being dog shit, so no degree. Bounced around some low-paying jobs for a few years, but lucked into a job at VW that paid far more than it should have for what it was, selling parts to local garages. 3 years of that allowed me to get the foot in the door at a company that manufactures refrigeration equipment. I provide tech support, handle warranties, and maintain the parts lists. For less hours, more money, and more time off. In under 3 years, I got a $9K pay rise with only a little more responsibility work. Last 3 weeks, I've spent half my days on Reddit. I have 0 qualifications currently, but will be doing some certifications over the next 12 months, which should allow for another bump in pay. I now make over double what I made 6 years ago. Story 55. Municipal government employee. Make about $75K. Next in line for a lead job which can max out at about $100K a year with free extended healthcare benefits for myself and partner and a pension that pays me until the day I die. Story 56. I started a small factory 6 years back when I was 24 with no degree nor enrolled in a university. Then after 2 years into business, I got a degree last year, online university. I did it so that only for the sake of getting a degree, nothing related to job though. Story 57. Insurance account manager for a large book of clients, 100K in commission, so about 145K to 150K per year. Husband also didn't graduate, is a landscape design professional, 120K. My sisters both have their masters and went to highly regarding universities, and they don't understand how I've established my salary as double theirs. But I also live in a H-call area and have been in this industry for many years. Story 58, firefighter paramedic. Over 100K a year and I work 2 days a week, 48 hours. And we get paid to sleep as long as no calls drop overnight. It's winning the lottery of jobs. Story 59. I am an environment, health, and safety professional. Technically, I have an associate's degree, but I got it through the Community College of the Air Force and didn't have to actually attend any classes to get it. Just tested out of 5 classes and boom, degree. Obviously, this means that I have military experience as well. What I have found is that, for the most part, the lack of a 4-year degree hasn't been a hindrance. Most people see the military record and associates combined with industry experience and say, good enough for an interview. I have occasionally gotten, are you going to go back to school? From retirement age folks on their way out, but not from 30 to 50-year-old folks now doing the hiring. I always tell folks that even though I dislike most of my 6-year enlistment, joining the military was definitely one of my better life choices, as it has set me up for success. Job opportunities, healthcare before I had good coverage from my work, VA home loan, etc., have all been tremendously helpful in being a stable through my 30s. That said, I am heading into my 40s and at the stage in my career where I am ready to move on from general managerial positions and looking to specialize. We will see if that lack of a 4-year graduate degree becomes an issue. Story 60. I'm disabled now, but I started out in PC repair, wound up building LANs, transitioned to system administration, and then network engineering, and ultimately cybersecurity before having to leave the workforce. All without ever even getting certified, much less a degree. I'm not sure that's something you could replicate today, though. I started in the early mid-90s before most CERET programs even existed, and I was enough of an enthusiast that I just clearly knew enough about what I was talking about to get my foot in the door in job interviews, and then built up the work history to keep me going. Story 61. Jet pilot. It's my first jet job and I'm making about $75,000 a year and I work like 10, 15 days a month. Story 62. I am currently a petrochemical pressure equipment inspector, API 57510, NBIC, IS. I got here by being a rope access window washer, followed by getting NDE certs, followed by APIs. Story 63. IT. Security Governance Specialist. Been in IT for almost 30 years with no degree. Doing a bachelor's in IT management now, part-time, because I feel like it, and regret never getting a degree years ago. Will likely have little to no impact on my career though. Story 64. People who didn't get university degree. This doesn't sound like proper English, and university degree doesn't sound much better. Story 65. Meat cutter. Never have a consistent schedule. Will work 10 days in a row with no overtime because of how the weeks roll over. I'm sore every day from lifting and stacking off 80 pounds boxes of meat by myself. I work every holiday. Life sucks. Story 66. I've been in IT for 30 years, all stemming from my need to build a PC that would run Doom, 1993. Story 67. Software engineer specializing in full-stack apps for mobile. Note, I've been in the industry for 35 years, and I was hired during my undergraduate studies. I just never finished it and just continued the career. Story 68. Full-time translator for most of the time. Also been an office manager in a pharmaceutical company, a data analyst in a data company, and currently full-time technical author and still part-time translator. Story 69. I have 2 degrees, 1 degree in business and the other in industrial design. I use neither. Now I fix appliances. I sought this job because it's recession inverse and I feel one coming. I don't want to get caught unprepared like in '08. I'm very lucky. I managed to buy a house in 2016 with the GI Bill, and now my mortgage is $1,000 a month. No car payments. No kids. I only make about $55K a year, but that's because I only work about 25 hours a week. I could work more and make way more, but I like the peacefulness of my life the way it is. I finally have affordable free time, and that feels like the rarest feat possible. Everyone I know works too much. My day usually starts at 10, so I miss morning traffic, and I'm usually home by 2, so I miss afternoon rush hour traffic too. If you can figure out how to be your own boss you should do everything you can to do so. It seems like that's the only way you will start making your worth. At least it was for me. Story 70. Most of my career has been in marketing or product design, creative director or product strategy. I currently manage one of the UX teams at a large corporation. I make good money, but it has been a challenge to move higher. Story 71. Associate's degree only. Am a director of product at a fintech. Worked my way up from an hourly call center type role over 10 years. Story 72. Staff infrastructure software engineer. I got into the field when college wasn't the requirement, and people who were self-taught were typically more capable. Story 73. I've since gotten my degree, grad schools as well, but still have same job that I got as a HS dropout. I'm a union switching operator for an electric utility. It's a great gig. The degrees, 70, paid for by employer, have made me better at the gig and definitely have increased my professional confidence, but they are not necessary for the job. Story 74. I taught myself how to code without a degree and am now a one-man department building for a small marketing agency. Story 75. Administrative assistant. I assist sales agents RN, working on a project management cert so I can get promoted to event logistics, gain some experience and years at this company, and then move to full-on PM work if possible. Story 76. Have worked in and around the AV world for 15 years. 100K. Have made more at the more soul-crushing companies. Unlimited PTO, bonus. Story 77. Small business owner. I dropped out of community college after a year when I realized computer science wasn't for me. Stumbled into running a copy shop at a bitbox store and found I really liked the copy shop portion. Disliked the big box store. Moved jobs to a local print and sign shop that did some specialty retail and worked my way up to store manager, then bought out the old owners when they wanted to retire. My wife and I run it now. We have expanded the print and sign shop offerings over the last decade. Also expanded the retail offerings. We recently doubled the size of our building and increased our product line by about 20 and our gross revenue by about 40. We make comfortable living and on target to retire by 55. Story 78. Dropped out from ITCS thing because it was boring AF and felt like torture. It was some dark time for me. Ended up working in a fintech company. Story 79. Armed hospital security. I make $22 an hour. I work in-house, meaning not for a contractor, and get PTO, decent insurance, and I have a pretty good team. Story 80. 3D animator pay isn't too good, mostly because I'm at an indie studio right now. It'll update you in a year or so. Story 81. Instrumentation tech. Gonna clear at least 150K this year. I love my job. Easy on my body, plus I get half the year off. Story 82. I dropped out of University of Toronto. I also dropped out of George Brown, the system I could not work in. Today, I'm an artist. Tonight, I'm hosting a Toronto philosophy meetup. I'm also proud cat owner. No regrets. I made it into the system, and I decided the system wasn't going to work with me. Too much of an individual. I can't go along with the herd. Story 83. Self-employed doing landscape maintenance, mowing lawns, shoveling snow, etc. I make close to 50K. I first worked for other companies and learned that I liked working outside and being physically active, but there were drawbacks. Minus 60 hours per week of manual labor is not something I want to be doing when I am 50. Even in my 20s, 30s, I would rather have some time off to enjoy things like camping. And I did not want to move up to an office job that paid the same. They were charging us out at 3x the hourly wage that we could hope to make. I was only called in to work in the winter if it snowed a lot, so would go weeks or months without an income. That last one motivated me to find my own snow removal work, which slowly turned into a full route. I thought I would need a truck to do summers by myself. I dislike driving. But then I got a bicycle trailer and I haven't looked back since. My expenses are really low because I do not pay for a vehicle, and the majority of my sites are within 500 meters of my house, 1 to 2 minutes away. There are days where I do work for 14 hours in the winter, but on average, I do 20 to 30 hours a week, with only half of those hours being physical labor, and I do not wish to work more. I am paid by the month regardless of how many hours I work. I feel very privileged to like my job. My retirement plan is to work less as I get older. If I am 70 and I am still mowing 1 lawn per day, then that is probably good for me. Story 84. I eventually did get my associates, but I'm in a job that all you need is a GED and a driver's license. I'm a firefighter at a large city department with a good union. I'm at full pay now and make about 100K without OT. The guys who scoop up OT heavy are making close to 200K. Some are crossing that. We get a fair amount of college grads, but we get a ton of guys who graduated from the local Catholic schools. My joke is that their parents paid tuition for 12 years for them to turn around and get a job you need a GED for. Outstanding return on investment. Reach for that star. But in all seriousness, it's a great fulfilling job with good pay and job security. Story 85. I have a master's, work in the field of my master's now, and love it, but a few things we were told as kids have very obviously been proven to be bullshit. 1. Getting higher education rarely equates to a job that makes lots of money. 2. The most in-demand work right now are not jobs that require university degrees. Story 86. I have about 60 college credits and no degree. I worked in behavioral health for about 14 years before becoming part of an admin team at a transitional living facility. I mostly work in data and managing the EMR. Story 87. Survey. Can be decent pay, but you're working in the elements, and sometimes your coworkers suck. The job itself could be really cool if the people you work with are cool. I think it's something common in construction trades that isn't often mentioned. Some of the people you work with can be downright toxic to work with. Maybe it's 'cause I'm a woman, though might feel different for guys. Some religious nuts, some conspiracy theorists, some applauding that we're heading into fascism. Story 88. CDCA. Chemical Dependency Counselor Assistant. All you need is a total of 70 credit hours that you can do online and a high school diploma. I help people get into rehab and counsel them on their addictions while they're waiting for a bed to open up. The pay is pretty bad though, so I'm looking to use my experience with this to help me find something else eventually. Story 89. Tried twice for a degree in physics and one in marine engineering. Am now a certified CNC machinist, and if I had just gone this way instead of chasing lofty academic aspirations, I would probably have a house by now. Story 90. Operations management at an ABA company. Did what my dad did when he was young and just busted my butt. Talked to the right people and let them know I was interested in growing. I went from many years in retail ops over to ABA last year. Story 91. Business Development Manager. Worked in sales for years for various companies. Started as a box boy and management, saw some shine in me, and gave me sales training. Grinded my way to a seat at the table. Story 92. IT System Administrator, but I have an associate's degree in biology. Not really relevant to the field I'm in right now, but I made it work. Story 93. I was an electrical mechanic for the city power utility. Now I'm an electrical engineer. On-the-job training really went far for me, and then some. Story 94. Work in IT as a senior infrastructure engineer. Got a few certs, built a little home lab, and learned what I could on my own. Base pay is around $150K. Most of my job is just reading and trying to understand stuff, followed by troubleshooting and more Googling. Story 95. Not me, but I have 5 people working for me without degrees. They all make over $100K as industrial security specialists. Story 96. Clinical Apps Analyst. It's in the public healthcare sector in the UK, so it's not a really high salary, but it's higher than any of my mates that didn't go to uni or learn a trade. Actually, several of them with degrees earn less. I earn slightly above the median salary here in the UK, which is more than I could have hoped for staying in retail or call centers. Story 97. I'm probably an exception considering I was also a felon, withheld judgment. I'm an engineer now. Current title, Assistant Chief Broadcast Engineer. This role goes hand in hand with both electrical and mechanical engineering. I'm also a systems admin, IT manager, and budding developer. Story 98. Union stagehand and arena theater riggers. I destroyed my back doing that now stage manage at a local news station. Story 99. I'm an infrastructure engineer. More specifically, I look after storage stuff. SAN, storage arrays, backups, tape libraries, and stuff like that. Petabytes and petabytes of the stuff. A lot of my teammates have degrees, which is fine. I often joke that I came up the blue-collar IT route. I binned off uni after 1.5 years and went and got an apprenticeship instead. It worked out all right. I'm earning just as much as my colleagues who got degrees. Uni isn't the be-all and end-all. I actually quite resent my secondary school for drumming into us that the only way to ensure a good, well-paid career was to go to uni and get a degree. It's simply not true. Story 100. I manage a produce department for a grocery chain in the eastern U.S. and make just under $100K a year. Schedules everywhere, but other than that, it's not too bad. Story 101. Steel mill, low six figures with some OT, can get in right out of high school, and I work with people who don't even have a GED. Story 102. Aircraft maintenance technician for a major United States commercial carrier. Just started out at about $70K, will top out my salary at $150K, 5 weeks vacation in 6 years. Union job, only work 4 days a week. Free flights almost anywhere in the world. Relatively easy work, most days. Story 103. I am a DevOps engineer, had an associate's degree in IT system administration, and worked my way up from IT helpdesk to this position. Story 104. 180K year marketer. All self-taught, luckily a niche that you need hands-on experience and track record versus being book smart. Most of what they seem to teach in uni is very old school, or better for corporate companies. Story 105. Graphic designer and Twitch streamer, mostly because I got into an accident causing me to become agoraphobic, and the way COVID was handled made me feel even less safe outside, and that just made it far worse. I talked to no one in person other than my aunt, who I lived with for 2 to 3 years during that time. Story 106. Right now, desktop IT support making about 75 grand a year. Previously, before they outsourced us, I was doing product support for Dell Technologies, the server division, not desktops, making almost 80 grand. That being said, college university would probably have gotten me where I am a lot sooner, but practical experience and networking did the trick, just slower. Story 107. Machine operator in a large Germany-owned factory. Good pay, good benefits, and relatively good work-balance life. Could it be better? Yes. Could it be worse? Yes. Story 108. Content service specialist. Worked my way up since I was 18, and now around a lot of uni students. They just grew up less quickly. Know some stuff I don't. Goes both ways. Are usually scared to think outside the box or break the rules. Story 109. I'm cheating a bit. I have a thing called an HND in electrical electronic engineering. It was a UK qualification that you could do part-time over 56 years. It was considered degree standard until the government fudged around with it. Employers lost faith in it. It essentially cost me nothing, although I had to take work with reduced hours to be able to fit in the study. 1 12-hour day plus 2 3-hour evening classes per week. However, as it was quite a common practice back then, employers understood the need for flexible working. I worked for the railway. They actively encouraged me, gave me technical salary promotions with every exam success. When I left there to go into wider industry, there was a bit of snobbery with the guys that went the traditional un-in degree route, but in the long term, it served me well. Had a career in hardware development for some pretty heavyweight companies. I ended up writing firmware in the microprocessor revolution, then software, eventually moved into financial analytics. It's a real shame that these types of schemes don't seem to be available anymore. Back in the day, you could get free higher education up to the age of 18, I think, if you were on a course. By that time, your studies were covered for the full course. Story 110. Former storyboard artist. Used to make 75K, but AI dismantled the animation industry. Just barely making ends meet now because I dropped out of animation school after my first year to pursue my career. A great sign and very impressive in the industry, but not out of it. And a high school diploma means nothing these days. Story 111. Was a couple credits shy from both degrees, both design-related, when I ran out of money. So I went to college but never actually got the degrees to show for it. I'm now happily tattooing and piercing people. I even get to use the knowledge frequently, even if I don't have the degree. Story 112. Electrician supervisor for the federal government at 110K year, upwards of 190K with OT, making way more than I ever imagined, and life is great. Trades are also a good stepping stone to help pay for higher education if it's not truly your forte. Story 113. Maintenance supervisor for a large truck company. I got the job because I am a licensed electrician who can also program PLCs. $120,000 a year. Story 114. Commenting for my husband. No degree, pen tester in cybersecurity. He's been at it for a little over a year and makes over 100K. Taught himself. Story 115. It took a number of different mini-careers to build up enough of a base, but I manage a team of people much more educated than I am, who can all do things I can't, and I don't pretend I can. My job is to remove the obstacles that interfere with them doing their jobs, and to find ways to move them forward in their careers. Earning at the lower end of 6 figures for 40 hours a week, home for supper every day, reasonable benefits, and several weeks of vacation. Story 116. Admin in a mental health facility for seniors. Pay ain't that great, but I sleep pretty well at night knowing that 16 very vulnerable folks have a very safe and dignified place to spend their days. Story 117. I dropped out halfway through my psychology degree, and now I'm a hairstylist with my own little studio. I make good money, set my own hours, and actually love what I do. College me would be shocked TBH. Story 118. IT manager at a small factory. I maintain the computers, administer and program customizations in our ERP system, and train all the users. And I supervise the operators of our laser cutter and help them when they mess something up. Mostly, I sit in my office watching YouTube or listening to music while fiddling around in our ERP. Story 119. Software developer, making about $300 to $350K a year. The industry is changing, but software development is one of the few areas where you can completely learn by yourself at home using books, online tutorials, etc. Story 120. High school dropout, software developer with 25 years of full-time experience. I'm doing okay for my level of education. Story 121. I have a degree, but never used it aside from one season at one job, if that counts. Work in media and entertainment now, doing video and content production. Low income, but I also have relatively low expenses, which helps a ton. Story 122. Dropped out halfway through my psych degree, and now I'm a UX designer. Learned everything from YouTube, boot camps, and trial by fire. Honestly, make more than most of my friends who graduated. Story 123. Grocery store supervisor level position. About $55K a year. Probably more realistic. What'll happen to most people if they drop out? IDK, what's with all these other answers? Story 124. I have a semester left of my degree in psychology. After working at Whole Foods for a year, I switched to working as a pharmacy technician. Started at 17, then 22, then 26 as a pharmacy buyer. Back to 22, and I am about to turn 30. I'm not super happy about that, and I'd like to return to school for nursing. Stay in school, kids. Story 125. I dropped out after 1 year. Now I work in IT, mostly doing sysadmin stuff and some light programming. Learned everything on the job and from YouTube, honestly. Pays decent, but sometimes wish I finished just for the piece of paper. Story 126. Union millwright. Make good money and usually laid off for a little bit during the summer. Turned out pretty decent. Story 127. Went into a business development position, banging out 100 calls a day. Moved to a sales rep couple years after. Kept moving up. Made $250K last year. Have friends with degrees making $80K. It's more about willing to grind, social skills, and learning as much as possible on your own than a piece of paper. Story 128. I draw blueprints for an architect. While it isn't an university degree, I had to learn the job for 4 years. Work and go to school. We have that for several jobs here. Story 129. Climbed many a ladder basically on accident at a giant shipping company as a people manager. Now an individual contributor who manages training compliance for many sites and makes a very solid salary. Story 130. Dropped out of university after failing my 3rd year twice. After a fair bit of trial and error in my early 20s, I took the advice of a guy I met who was doing the same part-time job I was as pocket money to top up his retirement fund. Go work for largest corporate firm in my city. Doesn't matter what job you take initially, work hard and learn as much as you can, and you'll be able to progress up the ranks and make a career out of it, even if you never work anywhere else. There aren't many companies left like that, but I still work at that one. They sponsored me through my professional qualifications, a degree equivalent in the industry. Think chartered accountant, but not quite as prestigious. My salary has tripled since joining, and I've not yet hit the ceiling by any means. So in short, find a big company, get in on the ground floor, work your way up, get qualified. It's still possible if you look for it, and what you might lose in pure job advancement, you'll gain in job security. Story 131. No degree, work in calibration and metrology. Make enough for my wife to be home full-time and 4 kids to have a childhood I never had. Story 132. Went to school for music for 2 years. Got good grades but felt really worried about the debt, so I dropped out. Now I work my jerk off as a music teacher and studio director. I do music full-time and make a decent living. That's more than I can say for most of my former peers who actually finished out their degrees. Life is funny like that sometimes. We do not live in a meritocracy, and hard work does not guarantee a good life. But in my experience, working hard has been the only thing to help me reach for a better life. Still regret dropping out though. Stay in school, kids. Story 133. Executive Assistant, 80K, 28. I've been working on my degree part-time through education benefits, but I'm gonna leave to go back full-time. BC school and work is a lot. Story 134. Own my own business, painting lines on parking lots. Last year I grossed 190K. This year not so much unless I get several large jobs in the next couple of months. Story 135. Got into IT through a help desk job when I was 19. Taught myself networking and cybersecurity on the side. Now I'm a sysadmin with a solid salary and zero student debt. No regrets. Story 136. 37M. Operations manager after working and running a warehouse for a couple of years. In the past, lawn care, landscaping, dealership photographer, auto parts driver, bakery route driver. Story 137. I'm not making nearly as much as some people here. I started working IT at a call center for HP. Just required some basic knowledge of computers. Did that for a year and used that experience to get into a traveling IT rep position, then worked on ATMs. All three were shoot pay, but they got me the experience I needed to get a job at a university. Now I'm making 64K a year. I get a pension, full benefits, can go to school for free if I choose to, and I just turned 31. My route was not the easiest for sure, and it took a lot of 60-hour work weeks to get here. But it's possible, and you can do it. Never doubt your experience. It can carry you places if you allow it to. Story 138. I work at a tea shop, LOL. I get to make people tea and sell loose-leaf tea as well. Worked in various retail and restaurant positions for about 11 years before I got this gig, and it's the best job I've had so far. Normal retail sucks jerk. I dread the potential day I have to leave this place. Story 139. Civil engineer. I did the technical route and worked my way up. Head of construction on a massive project now and have an excellent team under me. Story 140. Universal banker. I run day-to-day transactions for clients, but I am also expected to do everything but lending as far as account openings, servicing on the service line, if a relationship banker is not available at the desk. Many of my coworkers have degrees and have student debt and make the same as me, with the same opportunities to grow in the company. Story 141. Bar owner. Started out as a bartender. Applied myself to the craft side of things. I've opened and closed a few places over the years, but currently own 3 and working on 4. It's a really challenging and sometimes scary industry to be in, but I love it. I love offering food and drink to people who are themselves overworked or challenged by their job, who are celebrating, who are on vacation, who are on a first date. I feel like money aside am putting good into the world by offering hospitality to other humans. No AI, no automation. Just a really old trade. I make between 30K and 70K a year from each spot. I work between 25 and 70 hours a week depending on the week. It can be a little lonely at times and is very stressful. Looking at others who kept on in my field of study in college, I do not think I would have found fulfillment had I stayed in that track. I think the millennial generation exposed parts of the lie of college education. It is a tool that everyone is taught to use, but it is a blunt instrument and not a scalpel. In certain fields, it's absolutely necessary, but in many, many others, it is an unnecessary expense. Henry David Thoreau said he was surprised at his graduation to learn that he had studied navigation, and that he would have learned much more had he simply taken one turn in a harbor. Story 142. Engineer. I design electronic components for ships. At my current gig, I work on USVs for scientific research, but in the past, I worked on manned vessels. Story 143. I'm a customer service rep. I almost worked my way into a salaried corporate recruiting job, but I got laid off before that could happen. I am now an underpaid customer service call center worker. How far I've fallen from grace. Story 144. Bueno, yo tengo 2 títulos y vivo en Venezuela, pero no he ejercido con ninguno. Me dediqué a ventas industriales, ya que soy ingeniero, y como para no sentir que colgué el título, me mete en ese campo. Y menos mal que lo hice porque de lo contrario hubiera muerto de hambre. Aquí no hay campo para ingenieros, aquí no se produce nada. Los únicos que se salvan son los ingenieros civiles, porque si hay construcción, la reflexión final es que de nada te sirve estudiar algo si el sitio donde estás no hay oportunidades. Y lamentablemente las universidades siguen viviendo en la utopa, ofreciendo carreras con las que nunca podréis ejercer, entre ellas, ingeniera industrial. Aquí en Venezuela eso no sirve para nada. Y antes que salga uno por allí diciendo que el sí le funcionó me indica el sueldo que está ganando como ingeniero, porque se consiguen ofertas de empleo en el ramo, pero el sueldo es para llorar. Story 145. I ended up going back to school in my 30s and became a registered nurse. Though in my 20s, I had the good fortune of becoming a web administrator for a tech company without a degree. Story 146. Engineer. Somehow. I'm still trying to figure out whose bright idea this was. Probably some engineer. They're a special bunch. Story 147. I was industrial maintenance technician for 25 years, but since getting the COVID vaccine, I have had cancer, started having seizures, and cannot working anymore. Story 148. Working as a banquet server in various hotels. You can easily make $100K and set your own schedule when you're working on call part-time. If you have a full-time somewhere, you're pretty much golden. You usually don't work your full hours, but you make great money working 20, 30 hours a week. Depending on the hotel that you're working at, the pay can be between 30 to 100 an hour. Story 149. Not me, but my brother only did a few semesters of college before dropping out and now works as an electrical engineer. He had to get special exemptions for HR for his current job because they kept balking at him not having a degree, and the CEO had to come down to say, "No, we are hiring this guy." Story 150. Worked in warehouse operations for a decade, got into middle management, and then lateraled over to a tech role where I get to work from home. Story 151. Commercial real estate, 8-5 and all holidays off. It's been great, much better than the 8 years I spent in food service. Story 152. I work in a local high-ish-end salon spa chain in their corporate office doing admin stuff. I applied not thinking they would be interested since most offices want at least a bachelor's degree, but they liked me and offered me the job. Been here 4 years now. I make good money for the area, and I really have no complaints. Story 153. 15 years ago, I sold pizza for minimum wage. Eventually moved on into retail and moved up to management. Swapped companies a couple times, but had been a store manager at 5 different stores companies and have a good resume built up for customer service, management, warehouse administrative work. I really got a lot done. Then last year I had to move and started a new job. New job company failed and we were all laid off. No worries. I'll just go back to an old store, right? Went back to my most recent store. This company also went bankrupt, doing a restructure and got laid off with everyone else. Now we have a job crisis and I live in a heavily populated area. Can't find full-time work within 60 miles. I've been applying to new jobs every other day for about 10 months. I sell pizzas again for minimum wage again. Story 154. Account manager for a medical device company. It took 25 years of hard work and learning nearly everything about the products. Started as a technician in the repair group. Story 155. Data analytics manager at a pharmaceutical company. I've been working with SQL, Excel, Tableau, Power BI, and other visualization tools for about a decade. I'm just a computer nerd that dug into it. Story 156. I left high school with my diploma May of 2018 and started working full-time as a night custodian immediately after. It was my dream, and I loved it. I'd been with the company for over a year part-time and stuck with it until I was 21. I was told several times by union officials to take it seriously, and I did mostly their jobs as they'd already signed up for retirement. I never got the chance to get that promotion that I'd worked so hard for. I was making 16 when I started and 18-ish when I resigned. I now change tires part-time at Costco for $22 an hour as I submit FOIA requests and attempt to defame my former employer under grooming allegations. Story 157. I work for a state university hospital. Ha ha. I ran a hectic surgical service and residency program for 20 years and recently switched over to medical admin credentialing. Extremely boring and quiet. Making about $80K, but I also have a state pension, additional retirement funds, tuition reimbursement for my kids if they attend this school, excellent PTO, all federal holidays off, and health dental benefits. So I'll stay here for another 20 years and retire at 65. Story 158. I have both an undergrad and MBA now, but I am at the same level I was before the degrees. That said, with just a high school education, I built a full career and have worked my way up to principal engineer in telecom. Story 159. I started in an underground mine as a beginner, worked up to mine captain, now a shift boss who does superintendent relief. 20 years in the industry and worked with some of the best and worst. Story 160. Did a 13-year stint in desk-side technical support for a university and for state government. Got tired of being paid peanuts for hard work. I took those skills into my own hands, and now I am self-employed doing house call tech repair and electronics recycling. I'm not going to get rich, but it's an income. There's nothing that I do that you couldn't learn in a few months of self-study and with some hands-on experience. Story 161. Third-line software support. I'd have been here a lot sooner had I pulled my finger out at school, college, and gone to uni. Oh well. Story 162. In logistics, currently dispatching semi-truck drivers. Been in this industry for 5 years. Was in accounting before. Story 163. I've never admitted this, so I'm using this thread to get it off my chest finally. I'm Canada. There's a difference between college and university. I did 3 years in college and transferred over to university to finish a Bachelor of Commerce in Marketing. The thing is, I never finished. I did 1 semester and bounced. No one knows I didn't finish, not even my wife. This was right around the time social media became a job companies were hiring basically any millennial for. On my resume, I claimed I had my degree and got hired. Ever since then, I've stated I have my degree, but have built up over a decade of, admittedly impressive, experience in the field. So I technically went, but never finished. Claimed I did. Leaned heavily on the confusion of social media being professionalized early on, and gained enough experience that no one even cares to look at the education section of my resume. But to answer the question, digital and social media strategy. I've been behind a few astroturfing campaigns on this very website, 150K year. Story 164. I am in the UK for a little context here, as I feel some of the perks of my career are seen as general standards, where they aren't in other places such as the USA. I work as a residential childcare officer, working with children and young people with moderate to severe learning disabilities and other neurodivergent conditions, as well as physical disabilities at times, depending on who is living in the home at the time. I do have some downsides. Unsociable hours and shift work, as well as the occasional injury from behaviors that challenge. Mostly injuries are mild, but sometimes they are more severe. It all depends on the incidents that happen on the day and the moment. And if I can get out of danger in time, whilst making sure that all of the young people around are safe as my priority, i.e. I would take a black eye or concussion if it means that another young person doesn't. But thankfully, that isn't usually a common occurrence. Despite the downsides, I bloody love my career. I get to support children and young people who are usually struggling to communicate and need someone who can understand them, or at least show they are trying to. I get immense job satisfaction from my role, and I have built strong bonds with the young people I have worked with over nearly 5 years in the position. Prior to working with children and young people, I worked with adults in care homes and in the community, and I loved that too. But I much prefer my current position, as I feel like I can do more, as well as being in a better company than ever before. We are unionized, get enhanced pay during unsociable, out-of-office hours, get sick pay, and are actually supported by management and one another. I've had the chance to do 2 large qualifications since starting my work in care, as well as some smaller ones, such as Makaton Level 1, 2, and 3, and Food Hygiene and Catering Level 2. I did try university, but dropped out after just over a year, and honestly, I have 0 regrets. Story 165. Analytics software dev WFH, 6 figures, good boss. Has taken more brute force effort at times, but panned out well overall. Story 166. IT management. I got an AA in an unrelated topic and couldn't get into a 4-year through transfer program. For years, I was stuck in dead-end customer service jobs, studied for and passed certificate exams for basic technician jobs. Turns out soft skills are highly sought after in the IT field, and volunteering to head projects got me into management. Story 167. I got laid off and haven't been able to find a job doing the work I was doing before for nearly 5 months. I'm pretty sure I've hit around 110 applications between now and then. Story 168. Quality engineer at an injection molding plant. I do all right, not great, but I've got a house and a car and some expendable income. Story 169. Was in sales for a long time. Got into technology sales after being in the car business for a while. Ended up being recruited by Apple. Worked as a sales manager and corporate trainer. Spent 15 years there, then retired at 55 after both my parents passed away within 5 months of each other. Story 170. I didn't have privilege to do anything I'm good at, so I'm going to make 30 to 50 an hour fixing planes. Story 171. Mainframe systems programmer, was doing sales pre-COVID for 6 years, needed a change of careers. Joined a coding boot camp and somehow landed an apprenticeship in the field, and here I am. Story 172. Working at a ski resort year-round, making barely $30K a year, but making it work because I'm frugal and debt-free. Also, I get to ride my snowboard downhill, MTB, way more than most. Story 173. Community college dropout. I somehow landed a government job doing payroll for 600 people, plus all of our billing, and mostly everything to do with property taxes. Story 174. I work in local government. I'd like to get my degree someday, but I refuse to take on student loans. Story 175. Basically, an accountant making 60 Ks. Not much for most people, but I've never made this much before, so I'm happy as hell. Story 176. Web developer, but my actual title is Software Engineer 2 Premium. I think the premium might be because I'm from a contracting firm, but I have no evidence to support that. Story 177. Instrument technician. I used my associate's degree to land a job as a layout designer, then field power quality engineer, now working as an instrument technician. Calibrating gas meters and making sure commercial customers' radios communication equipment is working properly so our billing department can bill. Story 178. Senior systems engineer. I implement and upgrade public and private cloud infrastructure, build Fortinet networks, and migrate organizations to the Microsoft Modern Workplace model. Story 179. Software engineer, 230K AUD, completed 34 before I got a job in the field, so didn't bother finishing it. Story 180. I manage a locally owned running store. I never, ever saw myself doing anything like this before I started working here. But now I love the run specialty industry too much to leave. I've never been a climb the corporate ladder type person. So if I can't move further up than where I am, that's fine with me. I love what I do. Love most of my customers. And I finally make exactly how much I want to, which is enough to pay bills without pinching pennies. I was in college a while back to try and get a teaching degree, but the more I hear about how teaching has gone to hell, the more thankful I am that I never finished my degree. I actually make more doing what I do now than I ever would have as a teacher, and I don't have to worry about lesson plans. Feels like a win. Story 181. CSQA, I've done a lot. Started out as a secretary for a small business, moved on to OTR truck driver. Got lucky and found a local driver gig in my city 3 months into that. Was told 2 years later I had to go OTR again. So instead, I began working at the brewery as a yard dog. Was told I had to go part-time, so I left that gig and began running for a different local company. When my wife's appraisal business kicked off, I began measuring houses with her. And all through COVID was crazy busy. People were refinancing all the time, and we were making bank. 2 years ago, however, work had slowed massively, so I got a gig as tech support for an online self-service portal. A year in that position, and I got mad lucky with a CSQA position opening up, sold my jerk in the interview, and now that is where I am. Story 182. Partner in a small tax and accounting firm. Should clear $150,000 this year. Getting bored, hoping to hire more help and free up my summers again. I worked far too much the last 2 summers. I got into this business so I could A, make money, and B, have the summers off. Not doing too badly at it. Story 183. Audio-visual engineer, all OJT, Fantastic field for the jack-of-all-trades type because you're doing everything but steam fitting. Story 184. Retired after 30 years in information technology. I got in at just the right time, 1986, at my first job when an IBM desktop computer appeared, and my boss asked if I could hook it up. I took a couple community college classes, then moved myself to the Bay Area, where everything was happening, and found weekend work through a temp agency working on desktop deployments, and through that, learned about LAN switches. My idea of a hot Friday night was spent in computer parts stores around Silicon Valley, built my own PC from scratch, and through self-study earned several certificates. Then I fell into my niche, supporting enterprise networks within large healthcare organizations. Again, the right place at the right time. I retired early at 55. Story 185. I've bounced around industries and positions for over 20 years. I'm not a professional, so I guess the guidance counselors were right. I didn't go to university, so I never amounted to anything. In reality, I'm married, have a child, have no debt, and spent over a decade living overseas. Not unhappy with my life in spite of the fact that I don't have a business card with subtle off-white coloring, tasteful thickness, and